Well, welcome to another week of Specular Board Games perSPECtive, where we talk to... Oh my god, I forgot it already. Where we talk to interesting people about interesting board games. So I had just recently come up with the tagline and already forgotten it. Well, I'm Ryan Lieres, your host, and as always, I got my co-host Keegan Cole.
Hello.
And... Hey, you shut up. I'm not done.
You introduced me. I'm saying hi. It's your fault.
And this week's special guest, we got Andrew Kuplic. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yes, that is
Great.
correct.
Of Flamepoint Games. He's also the designer of Magical Unicorn Quest, which will be actually coming to Kickstarter pretty soon, which we'll let him talk about in a little bit. But Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Yes, it's great to be here.
So kind of our usual thing is to get to know our guests as board gamers, because that's who we all are and what we kind of want to know. Yeah, we want to know. We really, like, our big thing of starting it was wanting to just reach out to people, because we can't really talk to a lot of people, or like meet with people because of COVID right now. Like that's how we started this. We're like, let's just reach out and start talking to people that are on Instagram and stuff, and just to be able to chat board games with other people. And we're like, well, we could do a designer talk and interview, but we want to actually get to know them and the guests to kind of, or the viewers to know you as a board gamer. So a question we like to ask is, what is your first memory of board games?
I guess one of my first memory of board games, I was pretty young, and it's actually kind of a funny memory. So I had an older brother who loved to play games just as much as I did. And so he would be teaching me all the games, but he didn't want to play the kids' version of them. So like the first games I learned to play were chess, Monopoly, and Risk, no like kid version. And so I went over to one of my friends' houses. I was probably about 5 years old at the time, and they pulled out Junior Monopoly, and I was just completely confused as to what Junior Monopoly was and why there's a junior game of Monopoly when it's already a pretty simplistic game to begin with. So that's kind of one of my earliest memories of board games, and it's just kind of a comical one where I'm just like, okay, I guess that's the thing.
Yeah, they're just jumping you right in. So now does your brother still play? Do you guys still play together?
Yes, he still plays games. Yep. So he's got 2 kids at home, and so we don't really get to playing games as much as we used to, but we still do play games together. Yes. Okay.
Do you do it online a lot?
He's not big into online, so we'll get together with him occasionally. Even with the COVID, we'll still try and get to see them, but it's not super common. It's mostly just holidays and other big events, and then we'll usually bring out a game or something like that. But I mean, we're kind of just waiting for the pandemic to be over, I think, with everyone else, and get back to conventions and everything that we all love. And so
absolutely,
that's where we're at.
So now, who's like your core gaming group right now that you've been able to play with?
Kind of like my wife, somewhat my parents, somewhat my brother, and then I have a couple groups I play with online. There's a couple like Seattle Playtest group that I really enjoy playing with. There's some Proto-Spiel events that I'll do and things like that, but it's not like a group of friends that I'm gonna call up and hang out with at my house or things like that.
Sure. Yeah, we're just kind of stuck to Keegan, Max, and I have been our group. We used to have a very large group, but we're like, well, if we want to keep playing, we gotta keep this small.
Yeah.
What game in your collection would you never get rid of?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I guess Magical Unicorn Quest. I just gotta go with my own game. Or maybe I'm trying to get rid of them. I'm not sure. I'm trying to sell them. But, no, I like my own game. As far as other people's games go, I'm a big fan of like Blood Rage. I really like that game. There's some legacy games that I picked up on Kickstarter as a fan of. I was a fan of Seventh Continent one where it's like an exploration game, and then games like that I'm a big fan of, and I'll probably keep.
Okay. When did you start doing Kickstarters?
So I did my first Kickstarter back in 2019, 2020, kind of right before the pandemic hit, and then it kind of put a little bit of delay on getting it out. That was Magical Unicorn Quest. So I had a Kickstarter for it about a year ago, and that was basically for family and friends, and to basically get a bunch of copies to send out to reviewers and things like that. So it was kind of a growing Kickstarter, whereas like I'm just trying to learn the business side of the games outside of like designing a game. So it's like, how do you find a manufacturer? How do you find shipping? How do you get distribution and barcodes and sending it out to Europe and everything like that, just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And then from there, I decided to tweak the game a little bit after getting a lot of feedback from people that played the game saying, hey, I really wish there was this, or this wasn't a great mechanic in the game. And so the game got revised. We added several new cards to it. We updated some of the artwork, and it's just a really great game now. And so we're relaunching that onto Kickstarter here in April.
Yeah. And you sent us a copy to review, and we're just kind of waiting on some of those updated rules so we can get that tested.
Yes. I'll probably be sending that to you out today. I actually just wrapped up kind of writing some of those updated reviews, and then those will be going to some reviewers, so to make sure that everything flows and is complete and consistent. So probably do like I know Game Crafter has one where you can send it to them and they'll do a full review of your rule book. And there's a couple other people out there that do that too. So we'll go through that process before the Kickstarter campaign, just to make sure that the game is perfect for people that back it.
Yeah. And how about you personally, like for Kickstarters, for just like your own personal collection? When did you start doing that?
Oh, my personal collection. Yeah. I probably started that somewhat recently after college. I mean, it's kind of like a blur sometimes, because it's like you get a game and you're like super excited for it. When it shows up in the mail 2 years later and you're like, wait, I purchased that 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And then you repeat the process over and over again. Next thing you know, 10 years has passed.
Yeah.
So I've probably been doing it on and off for about 10 years now.
Okay, dang. I think I've a little over 2 years for me, and I have way too many. I've backed like 60-something games.
Oh wow!
So just
awesome.
Kickstarter stuff. It's too We've had a lot of talks about Kickstarter, and Keegan has.
I've kicked the Kickstarter habit.
You can get some games that just aren't fully flushed out on Kickstarter, or it's like the graphic designs and images and artwork just don't meet industry standards and things like that. And so you kind of really have to do like due diligence, like do they actually have a decent looking page? Because if their Kickstarter page isn't good, I can guarantee you that game's probably not be that good either.
Yeah, and we just did like so many games now just with the like Kickstarter exclusive stuff.
Yep.
Just having too much of it. I know Keegan's got some issues with, doesn't like that too much. I mean, I'm not a huge fan. I'm okay with a few of the stuff, but when it's like a whole like expansion or something that's just for Kickstarter stuff, it's...
Oh yeah, you get those expansions and they haven't been play tested normally. It's like, oh, I gotta throw something for my Kickstarter backers. And so you toss the expansion in when you're playing the base game and you're like, wow, this game is bad. And when you take out that Kickstarter expansion, you're like, wait, this game actually is pretty decent. It's like, why did they even give me this expansion? Why did they go to all that expense to make an expansion that wasn't that good? It's like, upgrade like the box quality, or give me some sort of thicker cards, or make the material from like a wood or a cardboard cutout to like a wooden meeple or something like that. Like you don't have to change the rules of the game just to make Kickstarter. It's like you can do it in so many other ways.
Yeah,
I love the Clans of Caledonia one where they added in that extra clan, and in the rules it says, here's the Kickstarter clan. We did not play test this. We just made this, so have fun with it. And then they had enough people play with it that they ended up making a rules errata for it online. They're like, well, now that you guys tested it, here's the official rules for it.
Jeez, okay.
That is, yeah, it's like things like that. It's like, why go to that effort? Like, you're paying a graphic designer, an artist, unless you're the artist yourself, you're in your time, and you don't even like try and put time into the rules. It's like, come on.
Yeah. And I definitely need to slow down on the Kickstarter stuff, but like there's
Do you
so
have
many
a favorite one of the 60 or so you backed?
Oh man, probably Root,
Okay,
or
yes.
my like super deluxe version of Gugong.
Okay.
Yeah, and now like the new Kickstarter for the 2 new Root factions is out now, and
Yes.
so that was day one backing
Everdell.
Everdell. That was
that's a great game.
Yeah, the final expansions for those is out with the big box. So
Yeah, I haven't played Root before, but from Leader Games, I played their Haunted Mansion game. Why am I forgetting the...
Vast.
Yeah,
Vast,
yeah. The Haunted Mansion.
Yeah,
So,
is that wait, the Haunted Mansion's the newest one, isn't it? Like the latest one they did, because the first one was like the cave one.
correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I should know. I
Yeah, they're
haven't played it
another
yet.
local board game company here in Minnesota where I am. And so I've seen them at a couple conventions back when conventions were a thing.
Yeah.
And they're great people.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of Leader Games, I think my personal favorite Kickstarter is the first one I ever backed, and it's one of Cole's games, PAX Premier 2nd Edition.
Okay.
Like that one's, the quality of that game when it came in, I was blown away, and I love that game a lot.
Right.
The quality is good.
Ryan hates that game.
No. I used to. I've come around to think it's just, okay. I'm no longer ridiculously frustrated with it, but yeah. And what? Oh god, another one just popped up like today that I was like, damn it! Now, the Super Fantasy Brawl. Some of the new characters came out for that. I was like, okay. And then with all like Shem's games with the West Kingdom ones, I gotta do, and so. Yeah, that's like I tried, like I'm like, all right. There were some recent ones that were up, like Stroganov, and I can't remember the other. There was another one, and I'm like, Eternal Palace, that I'm like, they look interesting, but you know what? I'm just gonna wait, because goddamn, yeah. So you said you play with your wife. Is she a big board game player, or does she kind of just?
She is not. Nope, okay. It's more to appease me. She likes to do the cooperative games.
Okay.
And so we'll play. That's probably a lot of the games that I've been playing now is like the cooperative games. So I got her started with like Pandemic and a couple of games like that, and then we did some Dead of Winter. We played. Then we played. Oh, I'm trying to remember them all.
Spirit Island.
No, I don't have that one.
Okay.
We have Zombicide, the Green Horde edition, and then she was more of a fan of. I'm completely blanking on the name right now, so we'll just pass on that. And then.
Okay.
But yeah, so she really likes the cooperative games. So that's a lot what we've been playing.
Yeah. Okay. And did she help with the design or playtesting with your game?
She definitely helped with the playtesting, and she's pretty good with words and rules. So she helped doing some of the revisions and things like that from the grammar side, and then. So yeah, she's definitely helped with playtesting, and she really likes the game and the artwork. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So.
Oh well,
so
I mean,
yes.
that's great that you have that your wife will at least appease you and play some games with you. And like Max's wife, like just will barely play any games with him, and so I'm just like, hopefully whoever, like, any partner I find will be wanting to play
Right.
board games with me, because I'm just like, I want to play games. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I was gonna ask, because you said so you're from Minnesota.
Yes.
Well, we're in Chicago. Did you go to Gen Con? When it
The
was?
Gen Con online or before, when it wasn't?
Yeah.
So I
before.
never was really into gaming from like a creation standpoint. So I never actually made it to Gen Con in person.
Okay.
But that is definitely something I do want to do. I did their online one, and that was not the most entertaining. So
Maybe I'll have to ask you a little bit about it, because, like, I was like, the whole fun is actually being there, play testing the games there in person, and just walking around and seeing what's there. And I'm like, I don't know how an online is going to do that. But,
right, and like half of it too is like if you have a game and you like have a booth, just someone's running the booth, and you can like walk around and be like, hey, come look at my booth. There's no way to like people watch, and there's no way to just enjoy yourself. It's like, okay, let me pop onto this Discord channel, try and figure out what they're talking to about, and it just, I mean, you could play a couple games, and then there's people like doing podcasts, and then it's like, so on the podcast, they're like, we already recorded this, and we're just gonna be in the messages answering questions as it's going, and it's like, okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's so different, because, like, if you have so many people in there, they're gonna answer, like, they're not gonna answer everyone. You can't like talk one-on-one with them and actually
you can't have a conversation.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, hey, let's spend 5 minutes and talk, and the guy's like, okay, let's do that, I got time now. I mean, how you find that one person and then you isolate him in a group of 30 to have a separate conversation in a channel that doesn't exist, so you quickly create your own Discord channel and tell them to jump over there. It's like
And board games are so tactile that, like, I go there and I like touching the demos and seeing the quality behind that they put on it, and like to see if I like this game. And I like, you don't really get that from the video. Like, they might be able to show it, but you're like, I can't touch it, I can't see the quality you do, and like look close at the art, and like just maybe fall in love with the game from doing it. And you're like,
well, I was doing some tabletop simulator, and it was like is a playtest group that was in actually just yesterday, and I was like, I made the comment to him, like, I think your game's really great, but it's just not fun on tabletop simulator. Like, if I could be in person with you right now, I would just absolutely love your game. It's because, like, some people are just like, say, you should do this, you should do that. I'm like, I think that's just the fault of tabletop simulator. I'm like, this game's actually really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we played Kanban for the first time on what did we play it on?
Tabletop Simulator.
Was it Simulator? Yeah, okay. Like, I loved it, but then, like, now that I have the physical copy, I'm like, oh god, I really, like, you could have, like, super sold me if I'd been playing it in copy, and
Right.
So, I don't know. So I really hope that this year they can do it, because
I'm optimistic. I think with the vaccine, and I think a lot of people are doing a lot better of social distancing and wearing masks, that we will be able to get conventions opening. But it's still like a touch and go thing. So, I mean, it's like 20,000, depending on the size event you go to, 5,000 to, I guess, 60,000 people in a building. It's
going to be quite a bit less. I know that, like, people will not go, and I've already seen like Twitter and stuff, people talking about there's so many people that will not go. No matter what this year, even if like everyone got their vaccines, they're like, I will not go yet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, so you're gonna have a smaller group. One, you could just not do demo, like you could just have people not be able to demo it, just so everyone's not touching these things and passing it around. You can kind of have it out and show them the game, I guess. It's not as fun, but there's ways to do it, I guess.
right.
That And like some other conventions are just pushing it back till later in the year. Like,
Right. They're hoping that if they push it back to August, September, October, yeah, 'cause anything like April, May, June, just not going to happen.
That's
If
too
you
soon.
push it back to October and you can really start seeing declines in people doing well, then yes, you can open it back up. But I'm optimistic.
I
So
hope. I really
I'm hoping.
hope. I hope Biden and whatnot, they can get vaccines out more and just
Yes.
So yeah. So let's talk about your game a little bit and kind of how you got the idea for it. Where did it come from?
So I guess a lot of it was with the design. So like when I was trying to design a game, I was trying to create a game that both is easily publishable, because I was trying to go down the self-published route.
Okay.
And I wanted a game that was thematic with the current trends within at least America. And there's a huge trend for unicorns, and so I was like, well, let's just make a game about unicorns. And then I wanted to be somewhat easily publishable in a small box. And so I decided to do a card game, and growing up I loved playing Magic, and so I was like, well, let's just kind of take some of the themes of Magic where you have like their instants, their sorceries, and their creatures, and kind of make a sort of slightly modified version of that. And so like ultimate goal was to get the unicorns. First person to get them wins. Kind of the opposite of like an exploding kittens, where you get the exploding kitten, you lose.
Yeah.
This is like you get the unicorns, you win. And so that was kind of the idea behind it. And then I wanted to add a little bit of substance to it. So a lot of what the company I'm trying to build is it's kind of like family-friendly games where both the parents and the kids like playing the game. There's a lot of games out there where the parents hate the game and the kids love it, or vice versa. The parents like the game and the kids just don't know how to, can't compete.
Yeah.
And so that we're trying to balance that with there being enough strategy so that way the adults will actually enjoy playing the game and the kids will enjoy playing the game as well. And I think we've hit a really nice balance with this. We've done a lot of play testing, especially since the version I sent you. Done a lot of play testing since then, and we've added some new mystical beings within the forest, and they just work really well.
Okay. And I guess what was your, trying to think of like my own design, like how I'm kind of going about designing it.
Yeah.
How did you first go about like thinking about these mechanics and how they're going to work together?
Yeah. So I wanted some sort of way where there wasn't like a runaway leader. So like you can get some games where like the rich get richer, and the only way you stop that person is like with a lose a turn card. That's just not a fun way to play a game. It's just makes frustration and people don't really enjoy it. But I still wanted to keep sort of like a take that style game where you can punish someone, but the punishment isn't so severe that they can't come back from it.
Sure.
And then I wanted a game that had really good graphics. And so one of my friends was cousin-in-law is a professional illustrator. He works for television shows, and he does a lot of the illustrations for Family Guy. He was on the new Star Trek show. And so I contacted him, and he said he would do the illustrations for it. And so
Nice.
that was a huge blessing. Being able to get someone that can make really good artwork is a really positive thing to have.
Yeah. And I know, like, so, like I said, Keegan and I are both kind of designing. And
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of other board gamers and some designers, and I was like, I had to do quite a bit of research as I was thinking about the style of game I was looking for, and
Yes.
I guess where was some of your research other than, I guess you already kind of said Magic a bit, but what did you go to kind of find out how to maybe like bring some of these mechanics to life? And
So I guess kind of just playing a lot of different games. Usually when I bring a game to like a group, I usually try and play a game that I haven't played too much. And so been doing that, I just see a lot of different mechanics in other people's games and say, oh, this is a really cool mechanic. I want to add it to my game, and try and create a game that uses something similar to it. So that's kind of where I see the rules, and it seems like you guys play a lot of different games yourselves, and you can point to a game and be like, this one wasn't fully fleshed out, and this one they took that exact same thing and just nailed it. And so that's kind of where I'm at too, where it's like I just like to play a lot of different games to see how their mechanics work, and then to take them into a game. And so it's
I should maybe should have specified, was there any additional games other than Magic that kind of were like, these ones kind of do, like, I really like what they're doing, how can I kind of modify to bring it into mine?
So Magical Unicorn Quest, I mean, it's a fairly simplistic game. It's just a little bit of stacking elements to it with getting multiples of the same mystical being in your stable. And then there is with the version that we're doing on our April Kickstarter, the rules are going to be slightly different. So instead of you controlling one stable, you'll actually be controlling two stables. You'll be controlling the one to the right of you and one to your left of you. And so you'll have two teammates. It'll be the player to your right and the player to your left. And basically what this does is it makes every person have two teammates. So in like a 3-person game, there'll be 2 people that win and kind of 1 person that doesn't. For there'll be 2 winners, 2 losers. And it makes it so like you are working with that person some of the time, but not all the time. And I really like how that fits within this Magical Unicorn Quest game. And I haven't really seen that too much in other games, so I can't really point to like a specific game where that is a mechanic that I've seen and works well.
I actually I saw that in the original rules that you have with it. I actually know, I was reading that I think it just more mentions it as like an advanced rule, like an alternate rule.
So that's the.
Go ahead.
You go.
Okay. I like when I read that, I was like, oh, this reminds me a lot of Mastermind. Is that what it's called? Why am I spacing on it? Is it Mastermind?
I think Mastermind's that game where you have like the colors hidden behind a thing and you have to guess.
Correct.
Medium. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't played Medium.
So it has a similar idea where you do have like it's you, and then you have a teammate on your left and your right. And one of those two, like you and the teammate, one of them will win. So in Media, I was like, oh, okay. And like, I like that idea that like, you're not just playing either you and a teammate, but like, you're kind of like almost competing also against yourself, right? And on 2 different teams on who you can work with the best.
Yes.
Cause that game it's like, you're working a lot with your both of your teammates, and it's just whoever can like which team can you connect with the best to like guess each other's wavelength here. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. So you bring that
is
more
kind of mentioned
game.
in the rule book that I sent you, and the final version is to be fully fleshed out where that is the main way you play the game.
Okay.
And so the idea of just having your own stable, it kind of left a little bit of downtime between players' turns, and there wasn't like enough time or interaction when it wasn't your turn. But by having multiple stables, you can, on the person's turn to your right, if they're going to play a creature, you can be like, place in the stable over here, help me, and you're trying to like convince them to help you. You feel a lot more involved in the entire game process, and that makes it a lot more entertaining and exciting to play.
I think that's a cool idea too, with like bringing in the idea of like having a game you can play as an adult and as a kid, because because I think that's a cool dynamic to play with like your family, where you're like, well, tonight my brother and my dad won, but maybe tomorrow me and my brother are gonna win. Like it's a cool it's a cool idea. I like that a lot.
And then it's like where you sit on the table is who your partners are too. So you're like, okay, I don't want to sit with my brother.
I want to sit
next to his.
Don't stick me with mom today.
She's always super nice. She lets me win though, so let's be on her team.
That's a cool idea.
She doesn't want dad to win. She wants me to win. Let's be on mom's team.
And thinking about design wise, and if like you're saying for family friendly games, like this is such a great way of introducing people to a game, right? Like a lot of people we talk with, they get into the game because of family, right? They're young, they'll play Monopoly, whatever, Catan early on with families, siblings, whatever. So this type of mechanic, I think, does such a great job of introducing people, younger kids, family members, and into games, but then also provides kind of like this additional competitive nature that can kind of lead to other games, right? Because you're like, ooh, like, yeah, I can like, who do I want to win with here? Who am I, right? Like what we were talking about, and I think for specifically like these types of games where they're a lot simpler, it engages people so much more, and I think we should definitely see more games with this kind of aspect of playing almost two different teams in I
think the game works really well that way, and it feels unique and different than other games and what are on the market, so it's definitely something that I enjoy.
And so I was like thinking of kind of like about how I go about designing my games and stuff. I like I'll just sit on my couch with like scratch paper and I'll just be writing out ideas, right? Scratching out and trying to figure out what was your process? What were you doing as you were trying to like think of these cards and like how they interact or whatever together?
Yeah, so I mean a lot of it was like I initially had 50 or so different abilities that all these mystical beings were doing. And what would happen is like one would either be way too powerful or just never got used. And those are two things that you don't want in a game. You don't want someone to only want one card because that's the way you win. And you also don't want a card to be useless because then when you draw it or get it, you're like, why am I doing this? This is a waste of a turn. And so we ended up adding 4 more mystical beings from the set that you had, and then we reduced the total quantity of all mystical beings of the same type. So you're no longer just having a handful of dwarves and elves, you're actually going to have some rabbits and toads, and we added a spider and a bat, and then we added some more potions. So the deck size itself doesn't increase too much. It goes from 75 to 100, but there's many more different types of cards, and that just it makes it so there's more paths to victory, and it makes it so that there is more replayability because of that.
Okay. How have you been going about yours, Keegan?
Yeah, mine's also a card game, so this has been already great to listen to.
Yeah.
I've been just writing down, to get me started on the cards, I bought a huge pack of note cards and then cut them in half. So I have like 500 squares for cards, and I've just been writing down on the cards like ideas for different parts of the game, like different effects and things. And I've been trying to come up with different mechanics that could potentially work. Maybe not all together, but taking those mechanics and writing them down, seeing how they could all blend with one another, and then seeing what might need to get cut. But I feel like it's hard to gauge any of this without actually playing anything first. So right now it's mostly just been like taking all these like pieces of paper and they have scribbles on them and hoping for the best. I just need to start making multiple copies of these things and stack them together and see how they work.
Have you already been testing them yet?
Not so much, because I keep having ideas. I'm like, oh, what if this was in the game? And then I'm like, this is too much game. I don't want to turn this into like a feudum where there's everything going on. And I guess just for context, for like, since Ryan, you already know, but the game I'm working on, I had another game I was working on, but I'm like really drawn to this one. My wife loves farm simulator games, so she loves Stardew Valley. And I've got her to play a bunch of Uwe Rosenberg games with me, so she's super into like Fields of Arla, and she liked Hallertau. So she's like, I want a game that feels a bit more like Stardew, where there's a bit more happening, but she also loves deck builder games. So I'm trying to make a farming deck builder.
Interesting.
Where your deck, you can like buy cards from different decks. Like there's like a crops deck, but you have different crops you can pick from. There's like a market, there's a tools deck, there's like a visitors deck, and you can buy these cards and shuffle them all into your deck, and they can all either have a one-off effect, or you can put them into your farm permanently, and then you can upgrade them while they're in your farm throughout different ways. So I'm also a huge fan of multi-use cards, so I'm trying to add that into the game too, where every card has a couple options to it. So I'm kind of trying to make a game that just kind of works for things that my wife and I both really love with gaming.
Yeah.
That sounds very similar play style to actually the game that I'm creating next after Magical Unicorn Quest. It's also a deck builder where you're kind of building two separate things. So the one that I'm trying to do is you're like a potion master, and you're trying to make the best potions. And so you get your deck, and the interesting thing that I'm trying to incorporate is with a lot of deck builders, it starts off like small cards, and you usually just get rid of them and you just have a deck of really cool cards. I'm trying to make it where the small cards are actually needed at the end of the game for you to get victory points.
Cool.
And so you have to both use those small cards and get rid of them, but then you have to go back into the market, rebuy them, because you still want them in your deck. And it kind of has that same feel. I'm thinking that like what you're doing with like building your farm, like you have to get all these tools and everything to build out your farm, and it's kind of it sounds like a very similar concept to what I'm trying to work on, just with like a potion style game.
Yeah, that's like something I was thinking about too, because you're totally right with like a deck builder game. Like a big part of the game is getting efficiency in your deck and like getting rid of a bunch of stuff. But like along the same lines as you, instead of having to recollect the basic things for the end game, I want to have it so every card that is a basic card can be upgraded. So then like the main one I'm thinking of that I am fairly okay with is like the top effect of the card is like a watering can, so you can water party your crops. But the other option you have with it too is you put it into your field as an irrigation system, and then you can upgrade it and you rotate the card, so every side of the card is a different level of the irrigation system. So you have to determine like, you get a bigger immediate effect with the watering can, but you get a long-term effect with the irrigation. So like all your basic cards can also become overpowered.
Interesting.
Huh. That sounds very interesting. I love the concept.
Yeah,
I want to play your card game now too, because I'm super into the idea of keeping everything. Like, everything's important. I love in games.
Right.
Yeah. So I think so. When I first started designing my game, I made the huge mistake of designing too much of it up front. And when I went to go test it with Keegan and Max, did not play at all how I thought it was going to, and had to just completely scrap that idea. And like what we talked about ended up leading to a new idea, and actually ended up focusing on a separate game. But the game that I had been working on with them ended up becoming something very different, and just a 2-player game. Yeah, it was like this weird like failed experiment of like learning how to design a game that like don't like the way you're designing it in your head and writing it down is not probably how it's going to work, and that you want to test things early on. And so I'm like, now with the game I'm working on with, like, I'm just testing main mechanics and seeing how that works. And so did you have any sort of like big failure that you learned from going through this process?
I didn't really have any huge failures within the game. I guess the biggest switch from changing to single stable to a multi-stable, I guess keeping it single in the initial version is kind of the failure, because it's just so much more exciting, so much more fun to have multiple stables as a player. And but I didn't really have any like massive failures where I was like, oh, I really should have done this, or someone pointed something out and it's just a glaring mistake.
Sure.
So but I have definitely will be coming across that with the next game that I'm working on. It's just so much bigger of a game with so many more little components and things like that, where you're just need to get it play tested. And I've done some various proto-spiel events, and those are amazing. I don't know if you guys have brought your games to those or not.
No.
But I would highly recommend it, because basically all it is, it's pretty much like 100 game designers get together and you literally just play everyone's game. And since you got game designers as the reviewers, they like, oh, I've played this game and that game, and you should really just add this to it because it'll fix your game perfectly. And so I'd highly recommend finding various proto-spiel events, either online or just various different groups, because that's the fastest way and the best way, in my opinion, to make a game, because you could sit in your room and you can toil with ideas over and over again and change a small rule slightly or make an ability from 2 to 3, and in reality someone just points out something that just seems so obvious afterwards, but was so hard to come up with. And those events are really great.
There's a friend of ours who's also a game designer, Jerome. He said that your game needs to work as a spreadsheet before you make it something beautiful, which I think is pretty accurate. Like, if your game doesn't work just on paper, like being a really bland, boring thing, no matter how much like paint and polish you put on it, it's still not going to be a great game.
Right. I definitely agree with that spreadsheet. I have a lot more of a mathematical background. So like when I go to create a game, I'm like, what is the probabilities of people drawing this card? How needed is this card? And then I kind of go, okay, like I'm kind of making like a press your luck element to the game that I'm working on it. And so I'm like, what are the odds of when a game will end? And so it's like, I kind of created a spreadsheet. It's like after 5 turns, there's like a 3% probability that the game can end. And it's like, okay, so that means 3% of the people that play my game are going to hate it because the game ends in 5 turns. And so I have to figure out a way to increase that to at least 6 or 7 rounds, so that way they can actually accomplish what they want.
Sure. And
that's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When as you're starting to like design some of the games, do you kind of know early on how the game is going to end, or does it kind of like come to you a little later as you're working through mechanics and they kind of like tells, like, I guess, how do you decide how you want this game to end?
That's a very good question. And a lot of it comes down to building a game with knowing where it's going to end, like having a set goal in mind and then trying to build mechanics out to get there. Because like, if you don't know if your game's gonna be a victory point game versus a last man surviving game, like trying to build a mechanic for both those two style games are completely different. And so I usually try and get the end goal and then try working backwards. And then, but it's so complex because I don't have a great answer for that, because I find I'll play test the game with one group and then the game's completely different the next time I play it. And I'm like, okay. And then the next thing I know, I'm like, well, now the theme no longer fits with the game because I changed mechanics. So let's go hunting for a new theme for this game. And I feel like the game will evolve 5-6 times over before I actually have a set that I like and want to pursue and move forward with.
Yeah. I have a couple follow-up questions for you then. Since you said you're also mathematical, are you more of a make the mechanics and then the theme will come, or do you kind of come with start it with, I have a theme I want to work with, let's see what I can build around it?
It's definitely more of, I have a theme and let's work something around it. I like to try and make my mechanics and the theme match together. I find that, at least in a rule book, like if your mechanics match your theme, then people learn how to play the game better. Versus if you just have a random mechanic out there that has absolutely nothing to do with the theme of the game, people always struggle as to why is that here and how does that fit. It's like, if you're a farmer and you don't have to wait for your crops to grow, they're always just growing the instant you plant it, you're like, well, this makes no sense, even if the mechanic works great. And people would never remember that, to be like, don't we actually have to like water it or let it rain? Like, why do I instantly plant an interject in the beanstalk and it just grows instantly? I mean, so I usually try and pick a theme and then match mechanics to match it that are fun with that theme.
Cool.
Yeah, there's so many games that you can be like, this. It does feel like the theme got detached from the game based on like these mechanics, and you're like, yeah, it's so much easier to learn a game when they do fit so well together.
Right. Another thing I say is like, always just constantly be pitching it to people, because like even if it's other game designers and things like that, I don't necessarily worry about someone like recreating my game, because they have 100 ideas themselves, and I mean the average person normally thinks their ideas and their game is what they want to pursue, or not to try and be like, oh, this person had an idea on making a game about potions, now let's all go and make a game about it. So we're going to keep with what they have and what they've started with. And so, but getting their input and finding out like where your mechanic is working well and where it's kind of broken is definitely a key.
Yeah. And talking to like, Jerome, I don't know, I'm not sure if you're familiar. Do you know Fujikoro?
No, I don't.
Okay. We've been talking with him and stuff, and I play tested with my game with him a bit, and it's like talking to people and other designers helps like kind of point out maybe things you've missed thinking about your game and what things maybe don't click with other people. Of like you say that you're trying to do this thing like this, like you have a particular goal that's going with a theme, but the way your game is looking, it's not actually doing the way you described it, which is kind of like what's happening a little bit with my game. I kind of described it and like talked with Jerome a bit, and I'm like, he's like, well, this whole like my game is like you're building up a town, but you're kind of all working together to like construct the different buildings, which then will give different abilities and powers. But like the whole game is centered around these 4 like guilds or whatever they're gonna be. And you're trying to. Have you played War of Whispers?
No, I haven't.
Are you familiar with it at all?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So in that game, it's just like there's 4 factions in the game, and at the beginning of the game, you're told, like you're secretly told like which ones you want to do better than others. And I really like that idea, and I wanted to do that for this game where these guilds kind of you're trying to gain influence and like give them influence so that they can move and be more powerful. And at the end of the game, they're essentially voting your family as like the head of this city that you've all built together. And at the beginning of the game, you've been given cards to say like, if this guild is in first place, like the highest reputation or whatever, they're going to give you so many votes. And so it's whoever can get the most votes throughout it. And they're like thinking about it, he said this it should be based more on this, like this is an interesting thing, and allow the buildings to then somehow influence them more, or like let that influence the buildings rather than just buildings be this separate thing that you're trying to build up. So it's just like talking to other designers, you can, and it just people in general will help focus it more, I'm trying to say it, help you kind of like narrow it and allow you to actually focus on one thing, and if what you think you're doing may not actually be what, like, how you design the game is not actually the way you're describing it, right? Kind of like,
Right.
yeah.
I think that like goes into like what my other question was going to be, where like the way I view playing a game and like designing a game are very different. Whereas I think designing a game, I always view it as like building a puzzle in reverse. So you have the image of what the puzzle is, but you only have so many pieces, and you're trying to like figure out, like, I see this picture, what pieces do I need to make this picture complete? And in a way, then like talking with other designers and playing your game with other people, every single person has like that one piece that you don't have in like the puzzle that you're building. So it's just, I guess the question would be like, do you see board games as puzzles then, as in a way then too, of like building a game as a puzzle versus just like this weird like architecture? Yes.
It is kind of like a puzzle because you have to get everything into the game. You have to be able to design it so that it's fun from the start, it has a good middle, and it's captivating. And so you do have a lot of these little different pieces, and then how do you make it unique? Is it unique based on different artwork? Is it unique based on different rules? Is it unique based on some sort of unique mechanic that really hasn't been done too much before? And for me, I usually lean towards really good artwork, graphic designs, and try to keep the rules more simplistic and easy to learn. That's a lot more of the theme of the company I'm building out. It's trying to build a fun, unique game with cool artwork. And if the mechanics aren't super complex, it can still lead to a very fun experience. I've played some games where it's like they have really complex mechanics and you're just like sloshing through a rule book, or you're or at least it got big enough to get on like watch it played, and you're like, oh, okay, after watching it played for an hour, I know what I'm supposed to do with the game. And those can be a lot of fun. Like I'll have a lot of fun with like getting a group of guys together and just playing the game for like 5 hours, but at the same time I sometimes just want something where it's like I just want it to be a 20-minute game that we can play after dinner, sitting around the table. And those are more of the design style games that I'm trying to build out right now.
Cool.
I mean, yeah, just talking about this, reading through the rule books, it fits in the category of like the medium, the wavelength, the what's the other, there's another unicorn game that you have the cards.
There's several out there.
Yeah,
Unstable Unicorns is another
Unstable Unicorns
card game.
And so it's like those really easy ones that super easy that you can teach someone, but everyone, even bigger gamers like ourselves, have a lot of fun just playing around. You're just drinking and just
I love like Pax Pamir and Feudum, but I got obsessed with Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza. Like that game is hilarious and stupid, and I love it.
I have not played that one. I've seen it like on shelves everywhere, like wherever I go, but I've never actually picked it up or played it yet.
It's so stupid and silly. It's a great like hanging out with some friends that you just like, let's just burn some time and play this for a few rounds. It's great. It's so much fun.
Excellent.
So before we kind of wrap up, I'm curious to know and allow you to talk about a little bit. You mentioned that you're trying to do this. You're trying to self-publish, which
correct.
From like podcasts I've listened to and stuff, and just people talking about getting into designing board games, it's a very difficult thing to do, to try to go off on your own.
Yes.
What have you found to be kind of the most difficult thing of this whole process?
Oh, definitely the advertisement piece. Trying to figure out how to reach out to people and to get past like just the family and friends, and to actually get like a following of people that like the game, interested in the game, and want to know like what games I'm coming up with next. I don't really have too much of like a social media, or other than being like a average like 30-year-old person, I don't really have too much like marketing skills. A lot of my background's more in the business side. And so like running the business and like understanding like the costs and keeping a game that I know like at what price point I can get it produced, where I can get manufactured, shipment, logistics, kind of all that project management stuff I'm pretty good at. Like that's a lot where my strengths are. And designing games I can do pretty well too. But when it comes to like marketing and trying like the best time, or like if I was to do paid ads, like where do I go? There's hundreds of people that want my money, and there's only like 10 that will do a good job with it. And so it's like, like where do I go with that? So
Keegan probably can answer some of that right now.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I work in social media for my day job. So.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, then I gotta talk with you more.
Yeah, pick my brain at some point. I'll be happy to help.
Social media is a really good way to get it out there. Instagram is probably going to be one of your better ways. Maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, Instagram just from the visual aspect, and because board gamers love seeing things. Yeah, Instagram's pretty big.
I mean, I would say too. Like, I don't know. Like, as I'm on a lot of Facebook, like board game groups. I don't know how big that would act, like that aspect of marketing.
I found some of those too, and it's like, unless you're like truly active in it, they don't just want you to be like, here's my post for my Kickstarter, go find it. Yeah. I mean, and they don't want you just like bombarding them with like 50 posts. I mean, if I was the owner of it, I'd be upset if like people just kept bombarding my group with messages of someone I don't even know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work well. More just makes people upset than like gets people to buy your game. You have to, at least I'm finding, you have to build like relationships with people and be able to tell your story and share your brand with them and like why you're doing it. And it's a slower process than just trying to like hundreds of $1,000s an ad, just beam it out there. But it's also one of those where advertisement's expensive, and if it's not done correctly, you can easily throw away $1,000 for no return.
Yeah.
Hopefully this podcast helps out a bit with and when we get our post up, and we'll do a whole video too about the game. So hopefully we can help out.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we're still new, but we're glad that we're starting to grow a bit more, and like being able to like have people reach out to us. Like, we're just glad that people are want to hear our opinion, I guess, on it. We try to just be as honest as we can. We're just like we constantly try to say in our videos the type of gamers we are, so that people can relate to it, and they're not just like, oh, they're just getting paid or whatever to put a sponsor on. We're like, if we think we enjoy a game, we want to let you know. And yeah, like even like as a gamer myself who's very like the mathematical working things out and around, like working out multiple rounds ahead, right? I can like I say that a lot when we talk about it, but these also types of games, I got it right here, that
there you go.
These are like I enjoy these a lot. Like I talk Medium in Wavelength and Codenames and Just One, right? It's just like these games that you can bust out right at the table, right after dinner, like you were saying, that are fantastic, even for someone who is Lacerda games and ones that are super crunchy. Yeah, like these are fantastic. So we're glad that you reached out to us. So thank you.
I'm glad that you're enjoyed the game and everything like that, and I'll definitely keep in contact with you guys.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, to wrap up here, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. We've talked a lot about your game, but is there anything else you want to plug, or maybe there's something coming up that you want to let people know about?
Just that our Kickstarter will be launching on April 15th. So keep an eye out for it.
Awesome. April 15th for Magical Unicorn Quest. So make sure to
Yes.
check it out and stay tuned for our we'll do some live, or not live, but playthroughs of it. Maybe we'll do it live. And then our review video. So
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys want to do some sort of playthrough online too, I'd be happy to join in or spectate.
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and until next time, see you later.
Bye.